Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. I hadn't done a video down at the creek lately, so I decided I would do one on the creek. Yeah, it's frozen. It's not 100% solid. There's still a little bit of water flow underneath, but yeah, it's pretty much a skating rink out here. In the like 12, 13 degrees this morning, but it is supposed to warm up today, almost above freezing. And then this week, we're looking at some 40s and maybe even breaking the 50 mark. So this will be flowing again before you know it. That's how winters go here in the Ozarks. I mean, it wouldn't be unusual for us to have a 60 or 70 degree day in the middle of winter because that's just how things are. Well, the whole conflict between us and Yemenese Houthis is going to escalate here real soon. The military has announced that they're going to be needing to plan a more sustained long-term campaign against them. So that's another way of just saying that we're in a war. I mean, it's maybe not declared, but yeah, it's a long sustained war. And I know that many, including myself at times, have kind of mocked and laughed at the fact that the Houthis, they just, they have those little racing boats. I mean, they're not much bigger than your bass boat, and against the United States Navy, the largest navy on the planet. But I just do want to point out that, while number one, I'm not saying that they are capable of taking out the Navy. Our naval ships are very big, and they're not designed. The strategy is not to be able to withstand a swarm of bees, which is really what they could be. And I don't think they have to destroy the U.S. Navy. I think they just have to disrupt shipping and make the U.S. Navy look like they can no longer protect the shipping for them to have some level of success. So things are going to escalate there, as we've known already, which will continue to escalate things in the entire region. And it's just, none of it looks good. And I don't think that this is going to be like wars in the past in the Middle East in the last few decades. I think it's going to be a bigger deal because there's not as much of this unified support. It's very fragmented. There's a lot of forces that are not on our side. So we'll see how this all transpires. Kind of moving on to maybe more prepping things because of all of this stuff that's going on. I've been telling you for weeks now, you got to get ready. And that's not changed. It's still the message, folks. But some of the things that we need to be getting ready for is, you need to be working on your energy sources. If you are off grid, that's great. Most of you, I don't think, are. But you should start stocking up on maybe some off-grid things. And I know your first response is yeah, that's expensive. I'd love to do that, but it costs so much. That's true. But it's never been cheaper to purchase solar panels and stuff. There are some very reasonably priced ones. You can get used ones, used solar panels that are used in commercial industry. Sometimes for less than $100 a panel for a fairly large panel. The cost is not nearly as much as it once was. And while I'm not suggesting that you switch your entire household, your entire homestead over to solar, it's become very reasonable for you to have at least enough to keep some basic stuff going. I mean, for instance, one of probably the most important things is your refrigerator and freezers, because you have so much food. Most of us have at least, we all have a refrigerator, right? Most of us have a freezer or two, maybe an extra refrigerator. And there's a lot of our food is in there. And so the ability to at least keep those things going is becoming pretty reasonable. Now, I know prices vary from area to area, and the amount that you need, depending on what you're trying to run. But for the most part, you could easily set up a solar system, purchase the batteries, purchase a charge controller, purchase an inverter, and set it all up. And it's not too hard. There's plenty of videos and instructional type material on the internet to teach you how to set it up enough to run, a couple of refrigerators and a couple of deep freezes. And you could do all of that for should be able to, do that for under $1,000. It's becoming quite reasonable now to purchase solar power. So I would encourage you to look into that. Also, you need to be making sure any generators are functioning. A lot of times generators set for a while. They may have old gasoline in them, may have gotten a little water in them, and so they need to be tuned up. You need to do some maintenance on your generator. Pull that thing out, fire it up. If it doesn't fire up, then figure out what's going on with it. Make sure you have plenty of fuel on standby. A generator is a band-aid. It's a temporary fix. You're not going to run a generator forever, typically. I know that there's an option to run a propane generator and have lots of propane, on standby and storage, but the average person is not going to run a generator more than, a few days or even a few weeks because the fuel consumption. But make sure your generator's functioning and make sure that you've topped off on all your fuel. And I would keep that topped off, stay topped off on it. Communications, you need to make sure you have some solid communications. We were talking about this a little bit last night in the live stream. I think everyone should have a CB radio. That's not your primary form of communications, but I believe every prepper, especially rural, should have a CB radio. And the reason is because pretty much most people, especially farmers and stuff, they have CB radios. They may not use them, but they still have them around because they used to be really popular. And when communications fail, cell phones, that kind of stuff, people are going to be dragging those CB radios out and they're going to be using them. And so you'll at least be able to listen to what's going on. Have handhelds. All the adults or capable people on the farm that's capable of maturely using them. I'm not talking about your toddler, but 10, 12-year-old and up should have a handheld radio. You can purchase these. I know they're not the best. I don't want to hear any of the sad hams talk about they're not as good as another brand, but things like Baofangs, you can get them for 20, 25 bucks a piece. The whole family can have a radio for, $100 or less. But then you need something better so that you can communicate, because those are very short distance, mile and a half, 2 miles usually. You can go further, but I'm talking average. So you want to make sure that your communications are nailed down so that you can, talk to people within your community and your tribe, but then you also want to be able to listen to what's going on. So, either any of those radios or purchase something that you can scan frequencies. You can hear emergency radios, frequencies, things like that. You need to have that nailed down. I would recommend doing that sooner than later if you haven't done so already. Of course, defensive tools, figuring out what you're going to do if things do get out of hand and you kind of have to go into defense mode on your property because of, violence and things like that. There's so many people coming across the border, and it's becoming more and more apparent. Not that you and I didn't know this, but it's becoming more and more obvious that many of these people coming across the border have ill intent. And so it's only a matter of time when something happens, whatever the trigger is, that causes them to kind of go into action. And you just don't know how many are living in your area that could cause, chaotic things to happen where you're at. So you need to make sure that you have that nailed down. Obviously, there's things that just every prepper knows or should know, food, water, medicine. Those are all highly important. We were talking last night on the live stream about EMPs and vehicles. And while an EMP may not be the most likely scenario that could happen, if you get someone like China and Russia directly involved with us, then that becomes much more likely. And even possibly North Korea. It's possible that they could potentially detonate EMPs over us and could cause a lot of havoc. In fact, they might be the more likely candidate to do something like that. Having an old vehicle, regardless of the condition, as long as it functions, it may look like just a junk bucket, but if it functions, that's all that matters. Something, in the 80s or further back would be great. And then just knowing your area really well, knowing the people around you, building relationships with your neighbors and the little shop owners and, family store owners around you is a good idea. Understanding the terrain around you, if you have to fall back, understanding, you know, the main highways, which are the ones that would be used, because the reality is that most bad people are opportunists. It's not necessarily like in the movies. And so even ragtag terrorists and stuff, they're going to use the roads the easiest way to get in and out. You know, they're not going to be, you know, Ramboing it through the woods. And so make sure you know really well the roads, the bridges, the terrain around you, and then the ability to be able to move in and around, to get out, to access certain areas, you know, by knowing the maps, knowing the terrain, so that you can get, you know, you could be the ones running through the woods and, you know, running over through the creeks and all that kind of stuff to get to a certain area, because you know the terrain better. It's that home advantage, you know, home field advantage of knowing your own terrain. We should all know our own terrain. It would be foolish of us to not have a home field advantage because we don't know our own terrain, and yet the bad guys do. So there's just some common sense there. I would be training within your home. You know, going over medical. Do your children, if you have children at home, do they know how to set a broken bone? Do they know how to use a tourniquet? My children have gone through, and I'm talking even the 10-year-olds, they've gone through stop the bleed classes. Do they know what to do in a bad situation, where they need to run and hide, where they need to go on the property? Do they need to go to a certain neighbor's house? Whatever it is, you need to have that nailed down really good. And then something that I mention very often, but I think it's important, is most of us have a routine. You know, we go to the same stores, whether it's work or shop or the doctor or school or whatever. Most people have they have the same routine. And so you need to have a plan as if things happen when you're out and about, how are you going to get together and get back home? You know, do you know where your wife is? Do you know where your husband is, or would most likely be? And do you have a plan, a rendezvous point? And does everyone in the family know how you would try to get home, whether it was in vehicle or on foot? Having plans like that laid out ahead of time is going to do you a whole lot of good when things happen, because you'll just be that much more prepared. There'll be less worry, less stress, less time trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. You already know what to do. You just go into action. Having your kind of a little get-home bag in your vehicle, something that's just the bare basics to get you home over a 2, maybe at the most 3-day period. That kind of stuff is going to be very important. Making sure your vehicles are functioning. You know, do you have good tires? Have you changed oil lately? Is the battery solid? Because you want everything running in the optimal condition right now in case anything does happen. So be checking all of that and kind of create your own checklist, go through it and do the best that you can, because we're kind of at that time. We're in that time period, and the possibility over the next few weeks of something dramatically escalating. I mean, we're already seeing escalations, but I'm talking dramatic escalation is becoming more and more likely. And so we need to be planning for that, and we need to be getting our houses in order, preparing yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.